The story of Tarkistan begins with a single powerful moment of humility and hope. Around the year 6000 BCE, a man named Jahilin al-Ansar was born. His first breath was drawn in a world filled with hardship. At the very moment of his birth, his father was suffering a deep humiliation, tormented by the powerful Mesopotamian guards who ruled the land with an iron fist. This was the world Jahilin entered, one where his people were not free, where their dignity was often stripped away. He grew up hearing stories of this injustice, feeling the weight of his family's suffering in his own heart. It was a heavy burden for a young boy to carry, shaping his view of the world from his earliest days. Jahilin's childhood was not one of carefree games or simple joys. He had an older brother, a figure who should have been his guide and protector. Instead, his brother was taken from the family, forced into the brutal reality of enslavement. This loss was a wound that never truly healed for Jahilin. He saw firsthand how the great Mesopotamian Empire consumed the lives of ordinary people, treating them as property rather than as human beings. The absence of his brother was a constant, painful reminder of the powerlessness his people faced. These early experiences planted a seed of defiance in Jahilin's soul, a desire for something different, something better. This deeply felt need for change grew into a powerful idea. Jahilin envisioned a new culture, a new way of life he called Tarkistan. This was not to be a kingdom built on conquest or power, but a community founded on shared values, respect and freedom. He dreamed of a place where people could live without fear of humiliation, where families would not be torn apart by slavery. He began to speak of his vision to others, sharing his hope for a society where every person mattered. His words were filled with passion, born from the pain he had witnessed and the love he held for his people. At first, however, his call was met with silence. The people were afraid. They had lived under the shadow of Mesopotamia for so long that the idea of a new beginning seemed like a dangerous fantasy. They feared the king's wrath and were hesitant to risk what little they had for an uncertain dream. Jahilin walked from village to village, speaking to anyone who would listen, but his words often fell on deaf ears. For a long time, he was a leader with no followers, a founder with no nation. It was a lonely and discouraging time, testing his resolve and the strength of his convictions. Despite the slow and difficult start, Jahilin's persistence began to bear fruit. A few brave souls, tired of the oppression and inspired by his unwavering belief, decided to join him. They were the first to call themselves Tarkistanis. The community grew slowly, one person at a time, one family at a time. By October of 6000 BCE, their numbers had reached 197. It was a small group, a tiny flicker of light against the vast darkness of the Mesopotamian Empire, but it was a start. For these 197 people, the idea of Tarkistan was more than just a dream. It was a promise of a new identity and a life of dignity. This small success, however, did not go unnoticed. The growth of this new cultural movement drew the unwanted attention of the powerful. The king of Mesopotamia saw Jahilin not as a visionary, but as a threat to his authority. The king's response was swift and brutal. He summoned Jahilin not to listen but to punish. Jahilin was subjected to great physical pain, a cruel message intended to break his spirit and scatter his followers. The king wanted to make an example of him, to show everyone what happened to those who dared to challenge the established order of things. The king's cruelty did not stop at physical harm. He also sought to destroy Jahilin's ability to lead his people by taking away all his resources. The money that Jahilin had carefully gathered to support his fledgling community was stolen, leaving the Tarkistanis destitute and vulnerable. It was a devastating blow, designed to crush their hope and force them back into submission. The king believed that by hurting their leader and taking their wealth, he could extinguish the Tarkistani movement before it truly began. The future of their small community hung precariously in the balance, facing a powerful enemy determined to see them fail. Yet in this moment of great hardship, Jahilin's true leadership emerged. He knew that staying in Mesopotamia would mean certain destruction for his people. With courage and a clear mind, he made a difficult decision. He gathered his 197 followers and led them on a desperate escape. They traveled under the cover of darkness, leaving behind their homes and everything they knew. Their destination was the city of Mosul, a place far enough away to offer them a chance at safety. This journey was not just a flight from danger, it was an act of profound faith in their leader and in the future of Tarkistan. Their arrival in Mosul marked a turning point in the epic tale of the Tarkistani people. In this new city, away from the immediate grasp of the Mesopotamian king, Jahilin was no longer seen as a rebel or a troublemaker. Here, among his followers who had risked everything to escape with him, he was revered. They looked to him not just as a man with an idea, but as their true leader, their protector, and the living symbol of their shared identity. In Mosul, the respect he commanded was born not of fear, but of admiration for his courage and sacrifice. He had led them out of bondage, and for that, they gave him their loyalty. The safety of Mosul allowed the Tarkistani community to finally put down roots and flourish. Word of their sanctuary spread, and more people, inspired by their story of defiance and hope, began to join them. Over the years, the small group of 197 grew into a thriving community. The population swelled, eventually reaching 10,000 people. Mosul became the heart of the Tarkistani culture, a place where their traditions could be practiced freely and their children could grow up without the constant threat of oppression that had defined their past. The dream that once seemed so distant was now a living, breathing reality. As the community grew, so did Jahilin's own family. He became a father to 5 children, who represented the future and the continuation of the Tarkistani legacy. These children were a source of great joy for him, a personal symbol of the new life he had fought so hard to create for his people. They were the first generation of Tarkistanis to be born into a community that valued their freedom and heritage. For Jahilin, watching them grow was a daily reminder of what they had accomplished and the profound importance of the path they had chosen to walk together. However, Jahilin's life was also marked by deep personal tragedy. His happiness was shattered by the loss of his beloved wife. Her death was not due to illness or old age, it was a direct result of the cruelty of a new and powerful enemy, the Pharaoh. This devastating event brought a profound sadness into Jahilin's life, a grief that he carried with him for the rest of his days. The loss of his wife was a stark reminder that even in their new home, they were not completely safe. The shadows of powerful empires were long, and their enemies were relentless in their pursuit of control. The constant threat from powerful rulers, especially the Pharaoh, weighed heavily on Jahilin's mind. Despite being the respected leader of a community of 10,000, he often felt a deep sense of fear for his own safety and for the future of his people. He knew that the existence of Tarkistan was a challenge to the great powers of the time, and he understood that he, as its founder, was a primary target. This fear was not a sign of weakness, but a reflection of the dangerous world he lived in. He carried the responsibility for thousands of lives, and the thought of their potential suffering was a burden he bore every single day. His anxieties manifested in his dreams. One night, he had a vivid and terrifying nightmare. In this dream, he saw a great tragedy befalling his people, a terrible event orchestrated by the Pharaoh. He woke from this dream with a sense of dread, believing it to be a premonition of what was to come. The dream haunted him, reinforcing his belief that the Pharaoh was a relentless enemy who would stop at nothing to destroy the Tarkistani community. It solidified his resolve to protect his people, but it also filled his final years with a sense of impending doom and sorrow for the future. Jahilin's deepest fears were ultimately realized. The Pharaoh, the same ruler responsible for his wife's death, finally caught up with him. Jahilin was captured, and his end was as tragic as his life had been difficult. He was drowned by the Pharaoh's men, his life extinguished in the very waters that had given life to the lands around them. It was a cruel and violent end for a man who had dedicated his life to building a community of peace and freedom. His death was a final, brutal act of tyranny from an empire that could not tolerate the existence of an independent culture. In his final moments, with water filling his lungs, Jahilin al-Ansar did not cry out in anger or despair. Instead, He spoke words that would become the foundation of Tarkistani faith for generations to come. His last words were a declaration of his unwavering belief, a final testament to the spiritual strength that had guided him through all his trials. For the Tarkistani people, the story of Jahilin is more than just history. It is the epic tale of their genesis, a story of a leader who was born in humility, lived through hardship, and died for his beliefs, leaving behind a legacy of resilience, faith, and an unyielding desire for freedom.